It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege of interviewing the Salle head and women's water polo coach, Coach James Wolff. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Can you talk about how you knew that you want to get started in coaching in college water polo?
Yeah, sure. I started off coaching with the Greenwich Aquatics Water Polo Club, which is an age group club in Connecticut. I did that for about 12 years. And like anything, I wanted to move up to the next level and work with older student athletes. And so, yeah, in 2022, after coaching for 12 years at the age group level, I decided to move into the collegiate space, starting off as an assistant coach with Iona College.
What was that experience like going to Pepperdine and being a collegiate water polo athlete?
It was a dream come true. Being from the East Coast as a player, back in 2005 when I was a freshman there, it was definitely pretty rare for an East Coast player to be playing at that level, which was a top 5 program at the time. And if you know Pepperdine, it's a beautiful place located on the water in California. So it was definitely a dream come true coming from the Northeast, where I was originally from Connecticut, where it was cold and snowy and stuff like that. And then moving out to California to play at that level, which at the time I was coached by Terry Schroeder, who's a legendary water polo figure in USA water polo, both as a player and a coach. Yeah, it was definitely a dream. I had to work really, really hard to raise my level of play, but it was definitely something that I always wanted to accomplish, and thankfully I did.
What was that feeling like for you getting to represent Pepperdine, a prestigious water polo program, and putting on that cap for them?
Yeah, it was an honor and a privilege. Pepperdine is the only non-Big Four school to win a national championship in water polo. In 1997, we won the national championship in water polo. So to come in 2005 as a East Coast kind of player, it was definitely an honor the first time I was able to put a cap on. It was definitely a dream the first time I scored a goal. Pretty much any first that I had, it was definitely something that I took very seriously, representing not only the school but where I was from. At the time, I was only the second player in program history to come from Connecticut. So it was definitely an honor and a privilege to do that. And just understanding the legacy and the history of Pepperdine water polo and the amount of top level Olympians that have come from the program, it was definitely, like I said, an honor and a privilege. And knowing that I was playing at the highest levels that the country offered was definitely something that motivated me every day as a player.
Of course, as an athlete, what was that like seeing those Olympians' names in Pepperdine that has come through that program?
I'll be honest with you, in the beginning, it was a huge shock. My coach was Terry Schroeder, who was a multiple time Olympian. But he also went on to coach the Olympic team in the 2008 Olympics when they won a silver medal. I played with people like Jesse Smith, who's also a 4-time Olympian. And then previously, there was many other players that came through the program that were in previous Olympic Games. I remember the first time that I walked out to practice and I saw Olympian Jesse Smith. That's when I realized that I had a long way to go. I think it really motivated me to work a lot harder, to raise my level of play, just to be able to practice with somebody at that level. When you have somebody that's not only the best player in the country, but one of the best players in the world, it's extremely inspiring. And it allows you to not only improve your game, but also improve the team, because everybody wants to raise their level to be able to compete with a player of that status.
Of course, for you, what were some of your biggest accomplishments as a water polo athlete?
Definitely related to being an East Coast player that moved out to the West Coast to play in a top 5 program. Today in the modern game, it's a little bit more common that players from the East Coast, for the Midwest, go out to California and play for the big teams like UCLA and USC, Stanford, Cal. But back then in 2004, when I was being recruited, that wasn't as common. So probably my number one accomplishment was being recruited by a top 5 program, and having the opportunity to go out and compete at that level. And then just a few other things that was definitely scoring my first goal in the college space, scoring my first goal in a conference game. Back then, there was one powerhouse conference called the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation. It still exists today, but it's restructured. Well, back then, it was all the best teams in the country were in one conference. So you had all the teams that I just mentioned, plus teams like Long Beach State, UC Santa Barbara, obviously Pepperdine, UC Irvine, Pacific. All these teams were playing in the same conference as USC, UCLA, Cal, and Stanford. So as you can imagine, it was a pretty high level every single game. You're playing with some of the best players in the world, in the country, and definitely a few Olympians. So it was definitely every time I was able to play in a conference game at the NPSF level, it was definitely surreal. And then going back to the first goal that I ever scored in a conference game, it was against USC in 2006. So it was definitely a memory that I have, that I'll always have, both as a player and now that I coach. It's definitely something that I like to provide for my own athletes.
What was that experience like for you being a referee on the collegiate level for water polo along with the US water polo?
Yeah, so the story behind becoming a referee was in 2007. I suffered an injury where I wasn't able to play as many games that season as I would have liked. And there was a tournament going on that the referee didn't show up for. And one of my teammates was joking around and saying, "Oh, I think he knows how to referee." Um, Little did I know, I never refereed before in my life. But somebody handed me the whistle and I started to figure it out. Upon graduation in 2008, I moved back to the East Coast and I decided to start officiating more at the club level. That was more with USA Water Polo. And then in 2009, I started officiating in the collegiate environment. And my first college game was Brown versus Iona College in 2009. Since then, I've kind of moved up the ranks. I'm currently the zone head referee for USA Water Polo in the Northeast zone. And also in the college environment, I'm currently rated as a Tier 1 official in the Collegiate Water Polo Association, which is the highest ranking that you can receive. I've had a pretty privileged career as a referee. I worked numerous championships, conference championship games, as well as officiating in the NCAA tournament twice. So I've had a pretty complete career as a referee. And since Salle University is a women's only program, I continue to officiate on the men's side of the NCAA.
Of course, what was that experience like going to Iona and becoming an assistant coach there?
It was a learning experience. I coached, like I mentioned before, I coached club water polo, so age group water polo for 12 years. And obviously, I was very experienced when it came to the X's and O's of the game. But coming into the college team, there's a lot more to coaching than just the X's and O's of the game, like I mentioned. Learning how to recruit, learning how to budget, learning how to work with older student athletes was definitely something that I learned a lot from. Head coach Brian Kelly, who's been there for over 30 years, is definitely somebody that you can learn a lot from because of his experience. And he's put out numerous head coaches from his assistant ranks, including Siena head coach Alex Williams and myself are the most recent people to be his former assistant coaches who now have moved on to be head coaches of their own. But just, working with somebody that has that kind of experience, not only on the men's side, but also on the women's side, as Iona College has both programs, it was definitely something that I was able to absorb a lot of information from him. And I was lucky enough to be hired here at LaSalle University, probably mostly because that we compete in the same conference as Iona. And that experience that I had obviously was able to lead me to the program that I'm currently leading.
Of course, what was that transition like for you going from being an assistant coach at Iota to coming over to LaSalle to become the head women's water polo coach?
Was definitely a big adjustment. Being an assistant coach, you're not necessarily responsible for the daily activities of the program. You're not the person that makes all the decisions that take place with the team. You're there to assist the head coach. But when you become the head coach, you're the one that has to make a lot of decisions. So learning how to make the right decisions was something that took me probably about a year to adjust to, whether that be the schedule that you create for the season, whether that be the scholarships that you decide to give out to student athletes, or just simple things, and how you manage the budget. Those things are all the head coach's responsibility. And those are things that can make or break your season. They can make or break your time at that university. So, making a competitive schedule that is able to raise the level of your program is definitely something that I had to learn. After my first year, going into my second year, it was definitely something that we changed. And then obviously getting out there and being the face of the program from a recruiting standpoint, that's something that's extremely important. Creating a different culture here at LaSalle University was definitely something that I wanted to do. Being the head coach, you're the face of the program. So you're the one that's going to have to go out there and really do it if you're looking to change that culture.
Coming to LaSalle, what was that feeling like stepping onto that water polo deck for the first time as a head coach?
It was an honor, Brandon, to be honest with you. Here at the Division I level in the women's space, there's only 34 Division I programs nationally. So it's definitely very competitive to get these particular jobs, especially as a head coach. So, being selected to lead one of 34 programs was definitely something that I was very proud to receive. But I take it very seriously. And every single day I look to improve myself as well as my student athletes. I look to improve the experience that they have, whether it be in the season or out of the season. And it's definitely something that, like I said, I take very seriously. And I don't take for granted because there's only so many programs that exist at the Division I level for women. And there's a lot of people out there that want these jobs. So being selected was definitely a long time coming. I have a pretty long career in the sport for being such a young person. I've kind of been in all different levels, in all different experiences as a player, as a coach, as a referee. So I've kind of seen the sport from all the angles that you can basically have. And as a result of that, I was able to land this job here at LaSalle University as the head coach.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you've built at LaSalle for the women's water polo?
Absolutely. Here at LaSalle University, we're an academically driven program. So we're the kind of program that we want to put our academics first. And last season, we were the #1 team GPA in the country for Division One. So as important as water polo is, as important as winning is, we understand that after the 4 years of them participating, they're going to have a different outlook in their career. So we like to focus on the actual individual, the character traits, and the culture is built off of the work ethic that they have both in the pool and of course in the classroom. So our culture is one that we put academics first, and we realize that if we put the academics first, that work ethic that they put into the classroom will translate to the pool. And those attention to details will definitely translate to the pool. And of course, the attention to detail in the pool will translate to, more wins during the season. But to conclude with that, we basically understand that after 4 years, they're probably not going to play water polo again. And so we are really focused on giving them opportunities to develop themselves professionally and also create a career opportunity for them upon graduation. And we find that with solid work ethic and attention to detail, that will be a no-brainer.
How have you been able to build a championship culture for LaSalle's water polo program?
That's a work in progress. We're a relatively young program. We only started in 2017. So we're still on our way to build a championship environment and obviously win a championship. We have made some major strides in that way in a short amount of time. The last 3 years, we've made the quarterfinal of our conference. So we are pretty close to making the championship game. And then this season, we had another milestone where we actually beat a top 25 ranked opponent. So there's small steps as we work towards getting to the championship game and winning that game, qualifying for the NCAA tournament. But we understand that it's definitely baby steps to achieve that. But we're on our way. I feel like the way we achieve that is by our recruiting and by our practicing and by creating a challenging schedule that will prepare us for our conference games. So this past season that we're currently in, we played 10 ranked opponents. We were able to beat one of those. So we're on our way to build that culture of playing, higher level opponents. And we hope in turn that when we hit our conference games, we're going to be able to translate our high level play that we had in those games into our conference games. And of course, if you win your conference, you're going to make the NCAA championships.
For my listeners that don't know, how do you play the sport of collegiate water polo?
Okay, so water polo is kind of a mix of a lot of different sports in one. So we'll kind of go through it. It has a similarity of soccer where the goalkeeper can use two hands. The goalkeeper is obviously defending a net, and a ball is trying to be, instead of kicked, thrown into the goal. Some similarities of soccer is also that we have free throws instead of free kicks. We have penalty shots instead of penalty kicks. We also have yellow and red cards like you would have in soccer. We also have an offsides line, which is similar to soccer. The difference between I'd say soccer than water polo is that it's very, very physical in the fact that the referees are standing on the pool deck while the game is being in the water. So there's a lot of fouls that are going undetected. And so having a really strong mental clarity in how you play the sport is super important. You can't allow the referee to affect how you play the game. And you need to adjust to what the referees are calling. And so since the referees are standing on the pool deck and there's a lot of action going on under the water, it's definitely something that is unique to water polo that you don't see in other sports. Another aspect of that is In water polo, when the whistle blows, the game doesn't stop. And that's a big difference between more mainstream sports like you see in basketball, where obviously if a foul is called, they're going to go to the free throw line or they're going to go to the side to pass the ball back in. Well, in water polo, when the whistle blows, the game doesn't stop. It actually speeds up. So that's something that for the normal person that hasn't seen water polo before can be a little bit confusing because there are a lot of whistles, throughout the game. And that part of it can be kind of confusing because sometimes the referee is not always explaining what they called. It's just because there's so many whistles, there's so many calls being made that they can't stop to make those calls, or at least explain it to the spectators. But for people like myself who have been in water polo for a long time, we understand the rules, obviously. That's definitely something that we are working on in the sport to create rules that are more understandable for, the public. But to kind of simplify it, we have ordinary fouls in which the player will get a free pass. We have exclusion fouls, which is basically a 20-second power play. So instead of hockey where it's a 2-minute power play, it's a 20-second power play. And then we also have the penalty shots like you would have in soccer, where obviously if the foul takes away a probable goal scoring opportunity, that's going to be a penalty shot. So that's kind of a simple explanation. But the game is pretty complicated in the sense that when the whistle blows, the game doesn't stop. It actually speeds up.
Who are some of the teams in your conference that you compete against each week?
Yeah, sure. We play in the MAAC conference, MAAC. And we have Wagner, LIU, Villanova, VMI. That's in the Southern Division, which is in my division. So also LaSalle. And then in the Northern Division, we have Marist, Siena, Mount St. Mary's, and Iona. Okay, so we have 9 teams in the conference. 3 teams from each division qualify for the championships, which is held every year. And then our divisional winners, so the first and second seed, the winner of the Southern and Northern Division, receive a bye in the first round of the tournament. And then the third seed from the South will play the second seed of the North, and then vice versa. Third seed of the North, second seed of the South. So the goal is always to win your division. And obviously the second goal is to get top 3 in your division. So you qualify for the championships. I think one of the unique things about our conference is that not every team qualifies for the championship. So the bottom teams outside the top 3 will not qualify for the championship. So the conference games become very, very important and very competitive, because you want to qualify for that championship and give yourself a chance to qualify for the national championship. If you don't qualify for your conference championship, then you don't have a chance to qualify for the national championship. So that's kind of how our conference is made up. And it's gotten a lot more competitive over the years. We do have some teams that have been kind of at the top for a long time, but over the last 2 or 3 years, the competition and the parity within the conference has really come pretty even. And so we're looking forward to seeing how the rest of the season plays out. And for us in our program, we're trying to qualify for the semifinals, which we've never done before, and hopefully, make that championship game.
What is that home game atmosphere like when teams come to your home facility versus going away?
Our facility is a very unique facility in the sense that we can hold a lot of people at the pool. I think the capacity at the pool is close to 400 to 500 people. We haven't necessarily had that many before, but we've had over 100 people a few times. And that's definitely something that definitely creates a home court advantage. Our pool is also kind of smaller compared to some other pools. So it creates a very, home field advantage here at LaSalle. I definitely think that one of the benefits that we have here at our facility is that we're kind of a smaller program, a smaller school. So a lot of the student body comes out to the school to watch the games. Water polo is definitely an interesting sport to watch. So we do get a good amount of students that come to our games. And that home court, that home court and that home fan base definitely assists the athletes in their performance.
What is it like getting to play those non-conference teams like UCLA, Yale, Brown, and Princeton?
It's definitely a big challenge. This year we played a number of those teams. The highest team that we played this year was Princeton, who I believe was number 9 in the country at the time. We played teams like UC Davis. We played teams like UC San Diego, Indiana, Harvard. So these are all teams that are in the top 20 in the country. And what it does is it allows our student athletes to experience some of the best competition that's out there. And we've had a couple games this year where we were, right in those games. For example, this year against UC Davis, we only lost by 3 goals, which was at the time they were number 13 in the country. This season against Harvard, we only lost by 1 goal. And then, earlier this year, we were able to beat number 22 in the country, Cal State Northridge. So again, playing those top teams, it prepares you for not only the rest of the season, but it also prepares you for the conference that we compete in, like we talked about earlier. So currently in our conference, there's only 2 teams that are in the top 25 rankings. So we definitely look at it as a preparation for what our conference is going to bring for us. And like I mentioned before, the non-conference games are just preparations for our conference, because at the end of the day, if we want to qualify for the national championships, we need to win our conference. So those are the games that are the most important.
What does that recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes? And as a head coach, what do you look at in those prospective student athletes?
Sure. Our recruiting process is about a 2-year process. We start obviously the junior year, where we take a look at their transcripts and their grades. Here at LaSalle, like we talked about before, we are the number 1 team GPA in the country. And last year, our average was a 3.72. So with those numbers, we usually try to look at people that are in that 3.5 range or above. So that's kind of like the first part of the process. We're going to take a look at your grades and make sure that you qualify academically to be a part of our program. And then the second part is obviously us, me and my assistant coach, getting out to the different tournaments throughout the country and evaluating those players in person and seeing what kind of skill sets they have that they can bring to the program. That process is definitely a long process, usually taking between 6 to 8 months of evaluation. And then we kind of group those athletes into 2 different categories, either a walk-on category or a scholarship category. And then from there, we invite our prospective student athletes out to the campus for an official visit, where they would stay with the team for 48 hours. And then after that, we meet with our current student athletes and make sure that that person fits the culture and character traits that we have here in our program. And then once all those checks are made, then we offer positions in the program. And usually that takes, I'd say the whole process can take between 14 to 18 months.
Of course, as a head coach, what's it like seeing those freshmen put on that LaSalle water polo cap for the first time?
It's amazing. For me, being a newer head coach here, it's only my 2nd year here as the head coach. It's amazing to see your recruiting class that you put so much time into come into the university and basically thrive both as a student and as an athlete. This year was my first recruiting class that I ever brought to pretty much any university. So to see those kids come in and be able to get right into the culture of the team has been just a great thing to see. But then I think the second part is like once the season gets underway, seeing those kids, thriving in the pool, whether they're scoring goals, making defensive plays, you know right away that you picked the right kid. And when you go through that process and it takes that long, sometimes close to 2 years, and you finally see that person come into an actual game, it definitely makes you feel really good that you did your due diligence, and you picked the right kid. I think the process for recruiting in water polo is a little more challenging than other sports in the fact that we don't have as many programs at the Division I level, like I mentioned before. So there's a lot of high school kids, there's a lot of transfers and junior college athletes that want to play at the Division I level. So that selection is very large. And the process to kind of go through all the kids that are interested, which can be in the hundreds, and then to pick 6 to 8 kids a year is definitely a big challenge that takes a lot of time. And so when you go through that process, and then at the end of the process, you have your 6 to 8 kids, it's definitely exhausting, but at the same time, very rewarding when you see them come into your school and thrive. But I'll say that being a college coach is no resting, because that process starts all over again. So you do that process, you do your recruiting, you do your visits, but then once you sign that class, then the next class begins. So it's a never-ending process. But if you want to be a top program and you want to be a team that's going to be in the national rankings, it has to be a 24/7 process that you never stop recruiting.
What is it like as a head coach seeing their seniors put on that water polo cap for the last time?
It can be very emotional, not only for the coaches, but also for the athletes as well. I think the thing to note is that water polo is not, at least in the United States, is not a professional sport. So most of the time when the athlete is done with their playing career here in college, then they don't play water polo at a high level again. So the realization sometimes of this is their last water polo game ever can lead to a lot of emotion. The one thing that I've found with that over the years of coaching is it actually brings out the best in the team, because when it's that senior day and that athlete is playing their last game, the team wants to play their best for that person. And the emotion of that situation can oftentimes really enhance the team's energy towards that game. And usually, most of the time, at least in our program, that's the last game of the regular season in the conference. And those games can be extremely important when you're talking about seeding for the championships. So those games are not only emotional, but they're also very important in the standings. And seeing that kind of emotion play out sometimes can bring out the best in your program. But for as far as coaches is concerned, I mean, we spend so much time with these student athletes, and the realization of you might not see that person that much anymore is definitely emotional at times. It's definitely something that as a coaching staff, we try to prepare for, just because it's a big, it's a big difference when you see that person every day, and then all of a sudden you never see them again, or very rarely. Here in LaSalle University, we're located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So a lot of times our athletes are coming from not all over the country, but all over the world. So sometimes after graduation, they're going to go back to a different part of the world. So the chances to see that person is definitely limited. But I would say that with the invention of Zoom, like we're doing right now, It definitely allows to stay in touch a little bit better. But it's definitely an emotional process that you can never really prepare yourself for.
What are some of your future plans for LaSalle's water polo program moving forward?
Yeah, we have a lot of future plans. Probably number one is to build the program to win a championship. We haven't had the chance to do that yet. But like I mentioned before, we're taking baby steps towards that. So our goal this year is to make the semifinal of the conference, which we've never done before. And of course, the next step after that would be to make the championship game and give ourselves a chance to qualify for the NCAA championships. That would probably be the number one from a water polo standpoint. We definitely have achieved a number of goals already this year. We beat top 25 opponent, which was one of our primary goals for the season. So that's definitely checked off the list. We're still looking to have a lot of individual accolades like player of the year in the conference, as well as, All-American players, things like that. From a student athlete experience, we want to do more traveling to California, and even an overseas trip would be something that we would definitely love to do. And so, yeah, we have a lot of goals in the future. But I think with success comes a lot of those things. If we're able to win more games, especially in the conference, then we can afford ourselves more opportunities.
What advice would you give those incoming freshmen entering their first year of college water polo?
That's a good question. I would say priority number one is time management. As a new student athlete at the Division I level, there's going to be a lot thrown at you. You're going to have a lot of classes. You're going to have a lot of training sessions. You're also going to have a lot of social distractions that you're going to have to manage. So the first priority is putting your priorities in order. So obviously academics should be your number one priority. Then after that, your athletics, and then your social should just fill in the rest of your time. So I think time management is number one. And then I think a second part of it is taking the time to invest in your teammates. Take the time when you're a freshman or a new player to a program. Take the time to understand what each person is made up of, because everyone's different. And when you join a program, it's important that you take that time to learn about each one of your teammates. If you don't do that, then that trust and understanding will translate to the pool. If you do take that time to learn about each player, you're going to be very comfortable with them, being around them as much as you are. And I think a lot of programs that are out there don't necessarily take that time to do that. And here at LaSalle, that's definitely one of our priorities, to build the chemistry between the student athletes. They spend so much time together in the water, but we also look to enhance that outside the water. So they live with each other. That's probably our number one thing that we do. We make sure that all of our teammates are living with each other. So they not only have to practice with each other, but they also have to live with each other, which comes with a lot of different things. They get to know kind of their families, get to know kind of what makes them tick, and those things translate to the pool. So it's definitely being a freshman is definitely a daunting task, because mommy and daddy aren't there anymore. And being able to translate your high school performances to college can be a big challenge, because there's not always that support system there for you. But I think being in a college team, you have to understand that your teammates and coaches, they are your support system. And if you take the time to invest in those people, then they will pay it forward, basically back to you. And they will be there for you when you need support or you need help. And that's something that we definitely build in this program. Is our chemistry is probably our number one thing. And our student athletes and coaches feel like they can go to each other for anything, not just water polo. And I think that's the part that translates, obviously, in life, especially after they graduate. They have the social skills and skill sets to be successful.
What advice would you give those athletes looking to go on the national team and represent, whether it's Team USA or Canada in water polo?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been fortunate in my career when I worked with Greenwich Aquatics at the age group level that I had a number of players who went on to the national team, including one of my players was in the 2016 Olympic Games in the Rio Olympics. So we've had quite a bit of experience with Greenwich Aquatics with national team players. Not only with the Olympics, but also with the other national teams, U20, U17, and U15 national teams. And I encourage it 100%, because what it does is it allows that athlete to get outside of your club or even your university, and it allows them to experience not only a different style of play, but it allows them to understand that they're no longer a big fish in a little pond. And that's something that's very, very important, especially when you're from maybe a smaller club or a smaller university where that player might be the best player, not only on the team, but in the conference. And if that happens over time, sometimes that athlete can develop some complacency where they know they're the best and they're not always being challenged. So when you go and you try out for the national teams, when you actually have an opportunity to make a national team and go play in an international tournament, you are humbled very quickly. You understand that there's a lot of players out in the world, even in your own country, that are probably better than you, and that you have a lot of work to do if you want to be, one of the best players in the world, one of the best players in the country. And having worked with those athletes over the last decade plus, I can tell you that when they come back after experiencing that, they're so much better for it, because they not only are humbled by the experience, but they're also looking at you saying, "Hey, coach, I want to get better. I want to keep striving." And they come back pretty much hungrier than they ever have before. And of course, that translates to the team and to the culture of your program that you're trying to build. So I encourage all athletes, no matter what the age, to compete for their country. And I did have an opportunity to do that once before, actually. In 2004, I was a part of the youth national team, which is the U17. I only got to represent my country one time. But having that experience was something that, when you stand up there and your national anthem plays, it's a real motivating factor. And if you're lucky to be able to do it, dozens of times, it's something that you never, ever, ever, ever take for granted. So yeah, definitely something that I encourage.
What advice would you give those future coaches out there looking to become assistant coaches and one day become head coaches?
Be patient. Be patient. The sport of water polo is a very small sport, and it takes a lot of time and effort to build your career. You're not going to jump into a head coaching at the job at the Division I level right away. It's going to take years and years of practice, especially at the age group and club level, for you to reach a head coaching position or even an assistant coaching position at the Division I level. I encourage all young coaches to start off at the youngest ages they can. Start off at the 10 and unders. Start off at the 8 and under level. That's what I did. I was coaching kids as young as age 4, and all the way up to 18 and unders. So starting off at the youngest level allows you to build your communication skills, because being a coach is all about communicating. And if you're able to build your communication skills at the different ages, and on top of that, the two different genders, you're going to create a very well-rounded coach who's able to translate their skills to the next level. But I will say that the point that I would like to make with that is be patient. There's a lot of people that I've run into in my career that think that they're qualified to be head coaches at Division I, but I think sometimes they haven't put in enough time and effort to be at this level. And understanding that being at this level is a result of years of hard work, not necessarily that you won some games and now you think you're qualified. So I think for me personally, I try to mentor young coaches all the time. And I try to teach them that just because you won a tournament doesn't mean that you're ready for that. Just because you won 3 tournaments doesn't mean that you're ready for that. After 10 years, maybe more, we can have a conversation about it. But like anything, you have to start at the bottom, and then you have to work your way up. Starting at the age group level, working your way up through that, then becoming an assistant coach, maybe starting off at the Division III level, and then working your way to an assistant coach at Division I level, and then eventually you can start applying for some head coaching jobs. But to kind of jump the steps, I feel like won't make you as well-rounded of a candidate as you could be.
What advice would you give those future head coaches looking to build their own program and build their own legacy in water polo?
Yeah, definitely have a lot of mentors. Definitely have a solid group of guys that you can talk to, or girls. For me personally, I have so many mentors that I can't even really explain. Obviously, I played college water polo, so my coaches that I played for are all coaches now. Terry Schroeder at Pepperdine, Alex Rodriguez at Pomona Pitzer are definitely 2 of my coaches that played. Willow Rodriguez is also a coach at the junior college level. He's one of my coaches in college. And then obviously translating to my club career, I have quite a bit of guys that I worked with. Preslav Zhipov is currently the coach at Whittier College, which is a Division III program. Chris Vidal is one of my good friends, who's a coach of Marist College, which is a Division I program. And then throughout my time as an official, I've also developed a lot of relationships with other coaches, such as Felix Mercado, who's the head coach at Brown. He's a good friend of mine. And so developing those personal relationships, and then obviously when you become a head coach, using those people as, kind of mentors is definitely something that's extremely important. But kind of going back to your last question, Brandon, is if you don't take the time to develop those relationships, if you're not patient with the amount of time that you put into it, then you're not going to have those relationships to go back on. So it's definitely important to be patient, and not only in your career, but also in your, personal relationships with other coaches, to take the time to get to know them, and invest the time in them. Definitely make phone calls. Don't just call somebody when you need something. Take the time to, call them and talk to them about water polo. Talk to them about, what's going on in the world of water polo, and do that regularly. Don't just do it randomly. When you do that, you're going to build those relationships, and you're going to build those mentors, so that when you need that piece of advice, you have plenty of people to call. And as a young coach, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to do that. If you don't think that, then you haven't experienced enough. There's going to be plenty of situations that are going to happen, especially as a younger head coach, in which you are going to need to have a list of references to call. And when you do that, you make yourself a better candidate for head coaching jobs. And of course, you create a better program for your student athletes.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you on social media along with the LaSalle water polo program at?
Yeah, you can find us on our website, which is goexplorers.com. We have at LaSalle Water Polo is our Twitter and Instagram handles. So feel free to follow us there. We're pretty active on the social media platforms. So it's definitely a big part of running a program these days is keeping your social media up to date. But yeah, the best place to follow us is definitely on our website, which is goexplorers.com. You can go up to the top and click on sports, go down to water polo, and you can take a look at our schedule. You can take a look at our results for our games. You can also click on some links there to watch some of the games live if you'd like to as well.
Thank you again, Coach James Wolff, for your interview, and best of luck in your future as the head women's water polo coach at LaSalle.
Hey, thank you, Brandon. Take care now.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram, Brandon Sports Talk Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach James Wolff, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you, Brandon. Take care.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.